Hello, everyone. A week ago, I released a video debunking several myths surrounding Nikola Tesla. So today, I decided to make a kind of sequel and talk about the legends surrounding another great scientist, Albert Einstein. In many ways, Einstein is the complete opposite of Tesla. While popular culture credits Tesla with extraordinary achievements in almost every field imaginable, Einstein has become one of the most hated scientists among conspiracy theorists. Some people dislike him so much that they seem incapable of speaking about him objectively. He's been called a fraud, a plagiarist, an incompetent scientist, and even the beneficiary of a global Jewish conspiracy. For many critics, his Jewish heritage alone is treated, but after moving to Switzerland, he graduated with excellent grades. Just look at his graduation transcript. His marks clearly show that he had already mastered both mathematics and physics long before becoming a famous scientist. By the way, if you're wondering, a 6 was the highest possible grade in the Swiss educational system at the time. Even back in Germany, Einstein wasn't considered a poor student because he lacked ability. The real problem was that he constantly argued with his teachers and disliked the rigid, authoritarian style of the German education system. In fact, by the age of 13, he was already reading the works of Immanuel Kant. Just think about that for a moment. How many 13-year-olds today even know who Kant was? Now let's briefly look at Einstein's journey, from his move to Switzerland all the way to winning the Nobel Prize. In 1895, Albert applied to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich. He failed the entrance exam. At first glance, that might seem like another argument for those who claim he wasn't especially gifted. But here's the detail that conspiracy theorists conveniently leave out. Although he failed the overall exam, he received exceptionally high marks in both mathematics and physics. His examiners immediately recognized his talent. They advised him to finish his secondary education at a Swiss cantonal school in order to strengthen his knowledge in the humanities and other subjects. Einstein followed their advice. Just 1 year later, he retook the exams, and this time he was admitted. It was there that he met the woman who would later become his wife, Mileva Marić. Interestingly enough, Mileva was the first woman ever admitted to the mathematics and physics section of the Polytechnic. Before long, the two young students fell in love. In 1900, after graduating from the Polytechnic, Einstein hoped to stay in academia and become a university lecturer. Unfortunately, there were no open positions. After spending nearly 2 years unsuccessfully searching for work, he eventually accepted a job as a technical expert at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. This is another well-known fact that's often used against him. The argument usually goes something like this: asterisk, how could an ordinary patent clerk, just another office worker, possibly produce one of the greatest scientific revolutions in history, asterisk. But that argument falls apart the moment you understand what his job actually involved. Evaluating patent applications wasn't simple paperwork. It required a deep understanding of mathematics, physics, engineering, and the ability to analyze entirely new technical ideas every single day. This was highly qualified intellectual work. And perhaps even more importantly, working at the patent office didn't mean Einstein had abandoned science. Quite the opposite. Only a year after graduating from university, he published his very first scientific paper. Not in some obscure journal, but in Germany's most prestigious scientific publication. Then, in 1905, he completed his doctoral dissertation. So calling Einstein just an office clerk is extremely misleading. He was an active researcher the entire time. Now here's another interesting story. In 1902, Einstein and Mileva welcomed their first child, a daughter named Lieserl. Surprisingly, she too became the subject of countless conspiracy theories. The reason is simple. Lieserl was born before Albert and Mileva were officially married. And after a few brief mentions in their private correspondence, she suddenly disappears from the historical record. The last known letter mentioning her dates from 1903. In it, Einstein refers to complications following scarlet fever. After that, nothing. Most professional biographers believe the most likely explanation is also the simplest one. Lieserl died in infancy. Sadly, at the beginning of the 20th century, this was far from uncommon. But conspiracy theorists prefer a much more dramatic story. According to them, Einstein and Mileva secretly gave their daughter up for adoption. Years later, she supposedly returned to meet her father after having a child of her own, and Einstein allegedly turned her away at the door. Conveniently, there isn't a single piece of credible evidence supporting this story. The reality is much less sensational. Infant mortality at the time was dramatically higher than it is today. In many European countries, nearly 1 out of every 3 children died before reaching adulthood. It was a heartbreaking reality, but sadly it was also a common one. So there is nothing unusual about the fact that Einstein rarely mentioned his daughter after her death, especially considering that he and Mileva later had 2 sons. Now let's move forward. The year 1905 became the most important year of Einstein's scientific career. Historians often call it his annus mirabilis, his year of miracles. During that single year, Einstein published 3 groundbreaking papers. The first laid the foundations for the theory of relativity. The second transformed our understanding of light and became one of the cornerstones of quantum theory. The third made major contributions to statistical physics by explaining Brownian motion. We're not going to dive into the mathematics behind these discoveries today. There are already plenty of excellent videos that explain Einstein's scientific work in detail. What's important for us is something else. These papers introduced ideas that completely changed modern physics. Almost overnight, Einstein became one of the most talked about scientists in Europe. He began corresponding with many of the leading physicists and mathematicians of his time. One of them was Max Planck. Before long, the two became close friends. Ironically, while Einstein's scientific career was reaching incredible heights, his personal life was beginning to fall apart. His relationship with Mileva steadily deteriorated. By 1914, they were no longer living together. For the next 5 years, Einstein tried unsuccessfully to obtain a divorce. Eventually, he made Mileva an unusual offer. He promised that if he ever received the Nobel Prize, every penny of the prize money would go to her and their children. Remember this detail. It will become important later. Einstein did, in fact, receive the Nobel Prize in 1922. By then, he was already one of the world's most respected physicists. He belonged to several national academies of science. The overwhelming majority of the scientific community accepted his ideas. Unlike Nikola Tesla, whose most productive years were already behind him by this point, Einstein continued making important contributions to science for decades. He predicted the existence of gravitational waves. He helped establish the idea that light behaves not only as a wave but also as a particle. And throughout his career, he made countless other discoveries that shaped modern physics. I'm not going to cover the rest of Einstein's life after the Nobel Prize. There's more than enough material there for an entirely separate documentary. Instead, let's focus on what concerns us today, because almost every major myth about Einstein revolves around his early work. And that's exactly what we're about to discuss. Now, when it comes to the authorship of the theory of relativity, there are 2 major myths. Interestingly, they completely contradict each other, yet both are built on the same assumption, that Einstein simply wasn't intelligent enough or qualified enough to develop such a revolutionary theory on his own. According to this narrative, he was just an office employee, so there was no way he could have transformed modern physics. But as we've already seen, that simply isn't true. Einstein remained an active scientist throughout his years at the patent office. He continued publishing research, exchanging ideas with leading physicists, and developing his own theories. Still, every conspiracy theory needs a hidden mastermind. If Einstein didn't create the theory himself, then who did? The first and perhaps most common claim is that Einstein stole everything from the French mathematician and physicist Henri Poincaré, and, of course, from Hendrik Lorentz as well. According to this version of events, Einstein supposedly borrowed all the mathematics from Lorentz, took the theoretical framework from Poincaré, and simply combined the two into one paper before taking all the credit. At first glance, this might sound convincing, until you actually look at the historical evidence. First of all, combining previous ideas into a more complete theory is not plagiarism. It's how science has always worked. Every major scientific breakthrough builds upon the work of earlier researchers. In fact, modern physics is still pursuing exactly this goal. Scientists continue searching for a unified theory that would successfully combine general relativity with quantum mechanics. If someone eventually succeeds, it will be one of the greatest scientific achievements in history. So there's absolutely nothing suspicious about a scientist building upon previous discoveries. But that's only the beginning. Although the theories of Poincaré and Einstein may appear similar on the surface, they differ fundamentally in several crucial ways. For example, they offered completely different interpretations of the physical phenomena they described. Einstein rejected the idea of the luminiferous ether altogether. Poincaré never did. He remained convinced that the ether existed for the rest of his life. The same was true of Lorentz. Neither Lorentz nor Poincaré ever fully accepted Einstein's interpretation of relativity. And that leads to another obvious question. If Einstein had really stolen their theory, why didn't either of them accuse him? The answer is simple. Because they didn't believe he had. In fact, both men treated Einstein with enormous respect. One popular internet myth claims that Poincaré publicly accused the young Einstein of plagiarism. There is absolutely no evidence that such an event ever happened. It's completely fictional. What Poincaré actually said was something very different. Mr. Einstein is one of the most original minds I have ever known. Despite his youth, he has already earned a place among the most distinguished scientists of his time. Hardly the words of someone who believed his work had been stolen. Lorentz was even more direct. In one of his letters to Einstein, he wrote, "The credit for developing this theory belongs to you." He later became one of the very first scientists to nominate Einstein for the Nobel Prize. Ironically, conspiracy theorists often claim they're defending the honor of Lorentz and Poincaré. Yet neither Lorentz nor Poincaré ever believed Einstein had wronged them. Apparently, modern internet detectives know better than the people who were actually there. But once the plagiarism accusation falls apart, another theory quickly takes its place. Maybe Einstein didn't steal relativity from famous physicists. Maybe he stole it from his own wife. Strange as it may sound, this has become one of the most widespread myths about Einstein, and perhaps one of the most absurd. To be honest, it's difficult to understand why so many people consider it believable. The argument rests almost entirely on one fact. Mileva Marić studied mathematics and physics alongside Einstein. And, of course, she was a Slavic woman, while Albert Einstein was Jewish. For some people, that's apparently enough to settle the matter. But is there any actual evidence that Mileva was the true author of relativity? Let's take a closer look. Mileva really did study together with Einstein at the Polytechnic. However, there's another detail that's rarely mentioned. She failed her final examinations twice. Soon afterward, she became the mother of 2 children. Understandably, scientific research was no longer her main priority. This doesn't diminish her intelligence or her education. It simply reflects the reality of her life at the time. Still, supporters of this theory often point to a statement made by the Russian physicist Abram Joff. When discussing Einstein's revolutionary work, Joff referred to the author as Einstein Marić. Some people interpreted this as proof that the papers had 2 authors. But that's not what happened. Joff simply assumed that, according to Swiss custom, married couples used a double surname. In reality, there was no such Swiss tradition. More importantly, in that very same text, Joff refers to the author as a clerk at the Swiss Patent Office. Clearly, he was talking about one person, not two. There are also several letters written during Einstein's university years in which he refers to our work. Conspiracy theorists immediately interpret this as evidence that he and Mileva were jointly developing the theory of relativity. But context matters. Those letters were written while both of them were still students. At that time, they genuinely collaborated on academic assignments. They even shared the same diploma research topic. That's completely normal for two students studying together. However, once Einstein began conducting his own independent research, his language changed. From that point onward, he consistently referred to his scientific work as his own. Even more revealing is Mileva's own correspondence. Whenever Einstein shared his scientific ideas with her in letters, her replies contained nothing that suggests she considered herself a co-author of his theories. If we simplify those exchanges, they sounded something like this: "Dear Mileva, I think I've developed a theory that could completely change physics." And her reply was essentially, "That's wonderful. Just remember to dress warmly, eat properly, and take care of yourself. I love you and miss you." There is simply nothing in their surviving correspondence that points towards secret scientific collaboration on the theory of relativity. In fact, there isn't even any indirect evidence suggesting that Mileva continued working in science after graduating from university. No research notebooks, no scientific publications, no correspondence discussing original scientific ideas. Not even recollections from friends or colleagues describing her as someone actively engaged in research. And that's a serious problem for the conspiracy theory, because it's incredibly difficult to believe someone was a brilliant physicist while leaving absolutely no scientific work behind. There is, however, one story that conspiracy theorists love to repeat. According to the tale, Mileva once told a friend that she and Albert had completed a piece of work that would make Einstein world famous. Sounds dramatic. There's just one problem. There is absolutely no evidence that this conversation ever took place. No one knows who this mysterious friend supposedly was. No diary mentions it. No letters refer to it. No contemporary witness ever confirmed it. Nothing. The story simply appeared decades later without a single reliable source to support it. Sometimes another argument is brought forward. People say that women weren't taken seriously in science at the beginning of the 20th century. Therefore, they argue, Mileva had no choice but to publish her work under her husband's name. At first glance, that sounds plausible, until you remember one important historical fact. Marie Curie was already one of the most famous scientists in the world. She received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903, 2 years before Einstein published his revolutionary papers. In other words, history had already shown that a woman could receive international recognition for groundbreaking scientific work. If Mileva had truly developed the theory herself, nothing prevented her from publishing her own research under her own name. Now let's return to something I mentioned earlier. Do you remember how Einstein promised Mileva the money from his future Nobel Prize? Believe it or not, some people claim this is also proof that she secretly wrote his scientific papers. According to this version of events, Einstein and Mileva supposedly signed a marriage contract before their wedding stating that any future Nobel Prize money would belong to her. Think about how extraordinary that claim really is. According to this story, back in 1902, Mileva somehow knew that 20 years later Einstein would receive the Nobel Prize. That's a remarkable level of fortune-telling. Reality, of course, is much less dramatic. Einstein made that promise years later, during the divorce proceedings. By then, he was already one of the world's most famous physicists. He had been nominated for the Nobel Prize multiple times and had every reason to believe he would eventually receive it. Offering the future prize money was simply part of the financial settlement that convinced Mileva to agree to the divorce. And as history shows, he kept his promise. When he finally received the Nobel Prize in 1922, the money went to his former wife and their children. So what picture emerges once we examine the evidence? Einstein's achievements weren't questioned by his scientific contemporaries. They weren't questioned by Lorentz. They weren't questioned by Poincaré. They aren't questioned by today's scientific community either. The only people insisting that Einstein stole his work are conspiracy theorists and internet personalities looking for sensational stories. And personally, I think there's an even more interesting mystery. Why do so many people who spend years trying to destroy Einstein's reputation simultaneously idolize Nikola Tesla? Logically, you might expect exactly the opposite. Einstein spent virtually his entire life conducting productive scientific research and making discoveries that transformed modern physics. Tesla was undoubtedly a brilliant inventor who made many important contributions. But his overall scientific legacy was considerably smaller than Einstein's. What's more, many of Tesla's later ideas simply turned out to be incorrect. If you haven't already seen it, I highly recommend watching my previous documentary about Tesla. It goes into much greater detail about both his genuine achievements and the myths that later grew around his name. Tesla was also an exceptional showman. He understood publicity better than almost any inventor of his era and wasn't above creating a little mystery around his work. Yet history has treated these two men in completely opposite ways. Tesla became surrounded by myths that greatly exaggerated his accomplishments. Einstein became surrounded by myths designed to diminish his. A conspiracy? Well, if you ask the internet, apparently everything is. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which scientific myths you'd like me to explore next. See you in the next video.